just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your host, Ian Dawson Mackay. Today's guest is drummer, actor, speaker, educator, and author, Rich Redmond. He's an award-winning recording and touring drummer based in Nashville and Los Angeles. He was voted Best Country Drummer in 2016 and has been part of over 22 number one hits. In this interview, we discuss his story, music, why you should learn to play an instrument, and how you can use your love of music to succeed in life. But first, a quick word about our affiliates. Next Level Guy has some amazing deals with some awesome companies. To see the exclusive listener deals, discount codes, and special offers, simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. That's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. I'd highly recommend picking up a copy of the Tools of Titans book, and that's from Tim Ferriss, maybe a Razor subscription from the Dollar Shave Club, and Alpha Brain from those great guys at Onnit.com. If you want to build muscle and learn how to be great in gym, you should also check out The Lifting Lyceum by Greg Nichols and Omar Yusuf. You'll find the links on the page. Again, that's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. Everything on this page is something I've tried and I recommend to you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate you doing this because when I looked at your website, initially I thought you were just a drummer, but you're such an inspiring guy. I couldn't believe the amount of stuff you do. Can you go into a little bit about who you are and what you do, etc.?
Sure. It's really hard to give somebody an elevator pitch, about what I do. But it's the umbrella for me is entertainment and motivation and music. Everything is pretty much under that entertainment umbrella. I've been playing drums since 1976, so 40 years I've been a slave to the master of rhythm and music and I've been able to chase my dreams under this music umbrella, and then as a result of succeeding in that field, I've been able to create other platforms for myself, whether it be writing books or doing motivational speaking or educating, and then now getting into voiceover and acting and hosting and stuff. So it's really just about powerful messaging and trying to make a difference in people's lives, whether it be through entertainment or through education.
Something I absolutely loved was when I looked at your stuff, I've seen it was drumming and motivational speaking. Now, that's not something you typically put together.
Right.
How did you get into drumming as such? Because you certainly don't even look 40. Never mind drumming for 40 years.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
And
yeah.
Now, you're doing motivational speaking. How did you start off into this sort of thing?
It was interesting. My background is I basically am a product of the music education system in Texas. There's a great music education system in Texas, and I was in the band starting in the 5th grade, and all the way through my master's degree. I have my master's degree from the University of North Texas in music education with an emphasis in jazz and percussion. And so I figured I always wanted to play professionally. That was my plan. But I figured, well, let me get this degree as an educator. And that really helped me, shape me as an educator. And as I was teaching along the way, I wanted to try to create a nice, a drum clinic. I'm doing a drum clinic tonight with the drummer from Tesla, a guy named Troy Laketta. He's been with this band called Tesla, which is a, world famous rock band. And we're doing a drum clinic tonight together. So for my drum clinics, I just wouldn't want to do like a 90-minute drum solo and say any questions and then, out the back door. I wanted to have some really solid messaging and takeaways for everybody that was in the room. And that kind of led to me developing what I call Crash. And Crash is a philosophy for successful living. So, if people are interested in it, they can go to crashcourseforsuccess.com. And CRASH is an acronym. It stands for commitment, relationships, attitude, skill, and hunger. So these are 5 things that people can use at any period of their life, in any season of their life, in any profession they can use this concept to attract more success to their lives. And so I've kind of just wrapped it around, how can you be a better drummer? How can you be a better musician? How can you navigate the music business successfully? And that grew into just global messaging, a powerful message that I've been able to bring to, Fortune 500 companies like Cisco and Johnson & Johnson and Microsoft and Hewlett Packard. And it's great because people love the drums. It's man's first instrument. There's something very primal about it that people connect with. And so I just happen to be one of the few motivational speakers in the world that plays the drums. So it does kind of go together in a kind of a fun way. People initially go, I don't get it. And then when they see it, they go, oh, this is edutainment. It's what I call edutainment, which is, providing quality messaging and inspiration, but in a highly entertaining fashion. So people are learning, but they don't feel like they're learning. They're feeling like they're being entertained. And then at the end of the hour, they go, wow, I really learned a lot from this dude. Hope that's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, from being an amazing drummer, I was watching it, and then people were talking about, like your YouTube channel where I couldn't say a bad word about you, and people always said, oh, I learned so much from the chats you have, and I noticed that there was a lot of things that sounded just like it was about the music industry in your discussions, but I realised how transferable a lot of the advice you were given was. So what do you think makes a good man? How can somebody know that they're living a good life? Because you do so much, and everybody seems to have a lot of love for you. So how can we be a bit more like you, or how can somebody know that they're living a good life?
Oh man, it's a great question. Well, yeah, I mean, if you look hard enough on YouTube, you'll see there's, when you put yourself out there like I do, and you're on the internet, you're a sitting duck for, pundits and people that are very bored that can just sit there and crucify people, and hide behind the anonymity of the internet. So that used to, yeah, it used to affect me, but I just try to accentuate the positive and find those birds of a feather, people that are into what I'm talking about. But, yeah, you're living a good life if you can do the things you want to do with your life and somehow put it together and make it financially viable for you to, to live the life you want to live doing. It's a really long life if you do something you don't like to do, but the days just fly by for me because I'm passionately involved in my purpose in life. And so ultimately, I'm lucky to have found my purpose. Some people spend their whole lives trying to find their purpose. And my advice to people is try to figure out what resonates with you, what makes you happy, and turn that into a job, because you'll never work a day in your life if you find something that you love to do. But I think our ultimate purpose is to affect each other in a positive way and to change lives. And you can use whatever you have in your, your back pocket, your skill set to do that. Some people do it through, the ministry. And some people do it through, they work for their government, and they're, for me, it's music. Music has a healing quality, and I've been to 16 countries in this crazy world of ours, and it's a universal language, and it helps people forget about their problems, and it cuts across cultural and language barriers. It truly is a universal language, and probably one of our highest forms of communication. It is a direct line to the soul. If you ever, you hear about when someone dies, the body is, when the soul leaves, it's just like the body is just a shell. And music is a direct line to the soul. That's why if you hear a song and it could just create an emotional reaction, you have no idea, why that's happening. That's the power of music. So
why do you think that is? If I can say an audience in Japan who can barely speak any English sing a song perfectly, how can somebody, why do we love listening to music when we're sad, and how can, why does music have that emotional connection with us?
I just think it's a gift, from whatever version of your higher power is. It could be, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, it could be, the universe, however, whatever you like to, consider your higher power, but it's definitely a gift. And it combines all these different art forms, science and math and, philosophy and, just the things that a musician has to do, the commitment that it takes to master an instrument, to learn an instrument and then master it. It's a lifelong pursuit. But like I said, it's a direct line to the soul. And And, here's a great example. Like, try going to do an intense cardio workout and not have inspiring and motivational music. It's a long hour. But when you have music and everybody's in that community, like you go to these group workout classes, 30 people, and they're all listening to the same song, and it's like upbeat, and it's like an hour flies by, and everybody's in a puddle of goo of just sweat, and they're just like, wow. And if the music stops, like, I don't know, my iPod's broken, I don't know what happened. It's just a long hour.
Yeah, I completely agree, because like a good song, it just seems to ignite you inside somewhere. What do you see as the biggest problems we're facing today? What you speak to some amazing companies and deal with some amazing people, but do you see a set of problems that these people are facing in this modern world?
A set of uniform problems that people are having?
Yeah, do you see things that keep coming up, like, lack of father figures, lack of, learning the skills of life, or too reliant on technology? Do you see, maybe too much alcohol abuse and things like that? Do you see, with the kids you work with, is there a set of problems that we could maybe work on rectifying when they're younger?
Well, getting musical instruments in the hands of kids has been shown to just like improve their, there's so many benefits of music education. I have a list here floating around, but it works on your science skills, your spatial reasoning, your ability to put out fires, solve problems. Here it is, benefits of music education. Look at this. An increase in language and reasoning, memorization, an increase in coordination, an increase in your sense of achievement, increases coordination, keeps kids engaged, helps their success in society, their emotional development, pattern recognition, better SAT scores, the use of imagination and intellectual curiosity, improves teamwork, risk-taking, and builds self-confidence. So you tell me right there that why are we removing music from the schools? And it's happening all the time. So that's part of my messaging is like, look at, my parents bought me a drum when I was 7 years old, and they stopped at nothing to see I developed that passion. So before I could drive a car, my dad was driving me around with timpani and xylophones and marching bass drums and drum sets and getting me into nightclubs to go play with like older guys, before I could get into the clubs, So I always tell parents, if your kids show interest in anything at all other than Xbox or their cell phones, get them, support it 150%. But I think there's those same universal problems that plague society, obviously, yeah, like no parents or single parents or, in the music business, you see the worst of everything because, idle time is the devil's playground. So like I'm on the road and I'm only on stage 90 minutes a day. So that leaves you 22 hours a day to get into all sorts of problems, and that's why musicians have so many substance abuse issues. And people are also attracted to and intrigued by musicians. They look at musicians as like they put them on a pedestal. And so with that, alcohol and drugs are free to musicians. It's everywhere. So you really have to have a good grounded sense of self and a good sense of self-control. Like I'm no angel. I'm a social drinker. I'm Italian. I love people. I like to be in big social settings. I'm a Leo, which means I try to be the life of the party. So I'm no angel, but I know that if I have to get up in the morning and do a recording session or teach a bunch of kids, it's lights out. It's time to shut the party down, So, But yeah, you see the worst of the worst in the music business, and you see the best of the best. So, but that's life,
Well, something I always equate, people see, like, playing an instrument as a hobby, where it's learning how to deal with a person as a skill sort of thing, and they're exactly the same sort of thing. You still have to learn principles and techniques and things like that. So, how is playing an instrument similar to learning a skill? And could you go into a bit about how did you master the drums and things like that? Because learning a skill is identical to playing an instrument, in my opinion, unless I'm completely wrong.
Learning an instrument is identical to what? I missed that part.
Sorry. It's to learning. Would you say that learning a skill is the same as learning an instrument?
Oh, for sure. And that's, what I talk about in my crash course, because I have commitment, relationships, attitude, skill. Hunger is skill. So like tonight when I do my drum clinic, I'll be talking about all the skill sets I think a drummer needs to navigate the music business if they want to take it all the way. I mean, I tell people, like, look, if you want to be a weekend warrior and play in the best, top 40 band in your city on a Friday and Saturday night and just have fun, that's great. It takes all sorts of pressure off yourself. But for me, 365 days a year to play with, I've got to be on a tour bus. I've got to be playing shows and showcases. I've got to be recording. I've got to be teaching and writing articles. And music is my life. So I have to, it creates a whole other level of stress in my life, to make a living from an art form that people love and they want in their life, but in the last 10 years has been devalued to the point where people will pay $4.99 for an app on their phone that makes fart noises, but they will barely pay 99 cents for a piece of art called music. And so we're living in very troubled times where, the arts are being devalued to a comical place, which is very scary. But yeah, skill sets, so I say, like, well, you got to learn how to hold sticks. You got to learn how to read music. You got to learn how to play all sorts of different styles of music. And I subscribe to the Malcolm Gladwell theory of 10,000 hours. So if you do the math on 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, you're looking at practicing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 6.5 years. And, I know for a fact that I put that amount of time in. I never kept a journal, but I mean, we're talking about something that's been an absolute obsession for 40 years. So it's probably more on the 10, 20, 30,000 hours, of applied effort. So, the moral of the story is, you can learn anything. Some people are more attuned to something. Like they might just have like a aptitude for something more than other people. Like I'm a horrible guitar player. I've got these stubby little fingers, and I'll take a break. I'll come back to the guitar and go like, this is my year that I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to be a troubadour. I'm going to learn the guitar. And I suck at the guitar, but I go and I can play on a set of drums, and and that's my happy place. I was born to do that, and I've been studying acting for the last 2.5 years. And every acting teacher that I come across is like, you need to do this. You have a natural affinity for doing this. So I don't know how you're going to find the time, but if you enjoy doing this, you need to continue doing it because you are a natural at it. So if we could just find those things that make you happy, that you have an affinity for, you can learn the skill set. You just have to apply yourself. And the older you get, the harder it is learning a skill, because we have less and less time. We have more obligations, the mortgage, the yard, the wife, the dog. It's a lot of stuff. So I tell the kids, the sooner you can find something you're passionate about, start putting the time in right then and there, because you have the time when you're young,
And why do you think that is? Like, why do we fall out of love with playing instruments? And, because you always hear that story about a guy who used to play an instrument when he was younger, but now wishes he'd never given up or had learned to play an instrument. Is there ever anybody who can't play an instrument? What advice would you give to somebody who wants to play, who's getting inspired listening to you, and wants to get back to, playing the guitar or the drums or whatever? How can they get that drive back again?
Yeah, they should do it. I mean, it's the universe telling you to do something. That's your God-given right. It's called intuition. It's that thing in your stomach that's the universe knocking on your door telling you to act. And a lot of people don't listen to that. They don't listen to their inner voice, the muse on their shoulder that says, do this at all costs. Because as you get older, there's too much at stake. Like I said, the wife, the family, the mortgage, I got to go make my job. Some people commute 4 hours a day for their job sometime. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Well, how do they work out? How do they have any personal time? But they're a slave to their income, and their income requires them to do a certain job, so, but if you want to go buy that set of drums, there's no reason not to. You can get a set of drums for $600 these days, and it's well made. And then you get some drum lessons. Of course, you can get on YouTube and learn, but YouTube is what I call the rabbit hole, because there's no curriculum. You get on there and somebody is doing a video on how to hold the drumsticks, and the next thing you know, you're watching videos from the most advanced drummers in the world playing things with their feet, and then people just get frustrated. And there's no way to get from point A to point B. The only way to do that is to get a teacher. And that's still the best thing you could do, is to have an in-the-room, flesh and blood teacher that is like a nun, slaps you on the wrist and says, no, you suck. Go practice. Don't waste my time. I had a lot of tough love teachers. Some people don't like to do that anymore. Some people don't spank their kids anymore. I don't have any kids, but I was spanked left and right. And I turned out great. So there's something to that. It's like, you want to do this? Well, apparently you don't want to do it bad enough because you're not practicing, But what is great about somebody doing something later in life is they may have the resources to do it. There's a station on the internet called Drumeo, and they've got, and I've taught on there before. They've had the greatest drummers in the world teaching on this platform, and their clientele is drummers 35 to 65 that have given up the drums that want to get back into it. How smart, because there's so many people out there that for whatever reason, they take a break, they take off 20 years to raise their family, but they never lost that little thing that on their shoulder that's going, you're a drummer. You love to play the drums. Why did you give me up? So my advice is to people, never give it up. Even if you only can go out in your garage and bang on your drums an hour a week, just don't give it up.
Because that's the problem, isn't it? We forget to do stuff for ourselves, like parents, they just focus solely on their kids. People get too focused on their jobs, and we forget to listen, like you said, to that internal voice. And I think it's one of the saddest things is when somebody's close to their death and they say, I wish I'd done that. A life of regret is the most terrifying thing I think we face as modern day people. So how do you explain to a kid who's maybe just started with you or their parents to make that practice fun and to keep the motivation there until they get over that initial terrible stage, shall we say?
Sure, it's a great question. Yeah, I tell everybody in my speeches, you never want to be a member of the woulda, coulda, shoulda club. Like, woulda, coulda, shoulda. And you don't want that on your tombstone. You want to, if there's something that life is telling you to do, you have to take massive action. The sooner the better. In my day, we learned how to hold the sticks, and then we learned these things called the rudiments, and we may have just been on a practice pad for 2 years before we even moved on to a set of drums. And what I've done recently is, since the whole world has ADD and people want immediate gratification, I wrote a book called Fundamentals of Drumming for Kids, and it's published by Modern Drummer Publications. It's distributed by Hal Leonard. You could probably get it at moderndrummer.com. It's in an ebook or a physical form. And basically what I did is I just get the kids on the drums right away. I show them how to hold the sticks, and then they get on the drums, and I teach them to play what I call the money beats. And the money beats are those 5 beats that people hear when they're in their mom's womb and they're coming up. They hear these money beats on the radio. They hear bands playing it. So I get them that immediate gratification of them being on a set of drums right away. And if they fall in love with it, then we can backtrack and they can pick up the rudiments, which is what we did in the 70s. We started with the rudiments and then we worked ourselves over to the drums. And I flip that on its head and I get them right on a set of drums right away, which really actually kind of works against everything I was trained to do, in my classical percussion pedagogy. It was like, you don't do that. You see if the kids are committed, and you got to teach them timpani and all this, how to play in an orchestra before they have any fun playing, Thriller or Beat It or Back in Black or, I get them playing Thriller and Beat It and Hard to Handle and AC/DC like right away. And if they fall in love with it, like I said, we can flip it on its head. But, I find that like parents, they throw everything against the wall. They're taking their kids to football, basketball, baseball, foosball, tennis lessons, ballet. They're just trying to get their kids exposed to artistic endeavors. And if one sticks, and my God, it's so expensive. Like, my parents were locked out because I just knew right away, 1976, I want to be a rock star. Oh, give me a pair of sticks, and I want to play along with Kiss records, And I didn't do any of that other crazy stuff. I was just so focused, like, right away.
Yeah, and you certainly achieved that dream. I think it was 19 number one hits you've been a part of.
Isn't that crazy? We're up to 24 number one songs. Isn't that crazy?
When I looked at the kind of people that you played with, it was just absolutely phenomenal, And has it always just been the drums that you played with these people, or do you play like a number of different instruments, and is learning to play one instrument kind of transferable to basically learning another? Or is it really difficult to pick up multiple instruments?
No, there's those guys like, you know, your Dave Grohls and your Phil Collins guys. They like sing like birds and they play every instrument and they compose and they produce all their records. And like, I'm not that guy. Like, my specialty is like playing a set of drums, playing for the song, making the artist happy. That's like a skill set, you know, coming to Nashville, hearing a song for the first time at 10 in the morning. And by 10:30, we've got a hit record, you know, that we play that's going to get played all over the world. It's like a really specific skill set to like, bring someone's song to life. So that's kind of like, call it art, call it a craft, call it a combination of the two. That's kind of where I live and where my skill set is. I don't have a lot of interest in playing a whole lot of other instruments because it's like being a slave to a lot of masters. And like I say, it doesn't come naturally to me to play all sorts of other instruments. So I just tried to focus on being a master of my drumming. And then as a result of being an expert at my drumming, it allowed me to like, it basically gave me permission to write books and speak and act and create this network of people that would say, oh, Rich is a really great drummer, but he's really comfortable in front of the camera. Let's have him host this, you know, radio show, or let's have him host this, you know, and I think at the basis of all that, even so more than playing the drums, my success in life to this point has come from persistence, determination, fearlessness, energy, but at the same time, just personality. Just being able to walk into a room and meet people and make them allies and do what I have to do in that moment. Being able to read a room, walk in, know what your job is, execute it, and then provide it, you know, at the same time provide a really awesome experience for people, because I tell people all the time that, you know, enthusiasm is contagious. It is so contagious, and it's so nice to pull up in a sports car and have a Swiss watch and the Italian shoes and all that stuff. People might remember that for a little bit, but for the most part, they're for sure going to remember how you made them feel, how you treated them, and the experience that you had together. So with life being just a collection of experiences, that's how I approach life. I just try to create like awesome experiences of rainbows and unicorns, man, you know, and you put all that together and you're like, wow, this was one heck of a cool life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an impression that you give, you know, you see that with too many people. They're too worried about what people think about them, and, you know, like they haven't got that self-confidence. So where does somebody get that from? You know, what happens to somebody who's listening to this and says, yeah, it's all right for you. You started this as a kid, or I couldn't do that because of X, Y, Z. How can somebody who's completely musically challenged, shall we say, get started? You know, how can they start improving, even if it's just to learn a song? Because I read somewhere that if you can count to 4, you can play the harmonica and you can play any song on it.
I would probably suck on the harmonica. I was built to play the drums. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's how to's on any book, and like I said, having a teacher is the best thing you could do.
And do you think there's anybody who can never play an instrument, or is that just an excuse?
No, I mean they could try it, but some people they just don't have that predisposition. You know, it's not in their DNA, it's not their purpose. It's a really great question, but I have taught people that I'm like, wow, I am doing everything that I can possibly do with my 40 years of playing and teaching experience to get this person to go boom, whack, boom, whack, boom, whack. And I'm playing it, I'm singing it, I'm shouting, I'm sweating in their face, I'm doing everything I can to be supportive, and they just, over the course of 60 minutes, can't get it. And I'm not going to say that person is never going to get it together. Maybe they just couldn't do it that day, but maybe they go home and they have an epiphany and they put on Back in Black, and it just clicks, and they become one of the greatest drummers in the world. Like, I'm that guy. I'm like the guy that the glass is half full. But for whatever reason, you know, on that particular day that I was teaching them, it was not happening, you know.
So, I mean, you've played with some amazing people, and, you know, you've coached for a number of years as well. How do you coach somebody? You know, what methods or what success have you learned about being a good leader and a teacher?
Well, you know, being a drummer is you are a leader and a follower / team player all at the same time. That's why drummers and musicians make great motivational speakers, because it's like sports. It's like you're only as strong as your weakest link, and music is a team sport. You have to listen, and everybody's parts have to come together to create this beautiful musical, like, pastiche. It's got to all come together at the right time, in perfect harmony. And it's just a really beautiful thing to be part of. But no, drummers are leaders, man. We see everything, and we have usually the loudest instruments, so we have all the power to create the whole feeling and energy and vibe and attitude and everything of the music. But yeah, I've learned also that, you're really in charge of your own destiny. Whatever you want in life, you can have it. I will say this, it's really hard to have everything. I've got, I won't call them failed, but I've had 2 attempted marriages and a ton of girlfriends. And so I believe in love, but doing what I do, I'm a slave to my art, and I'm constantly traveling. I haven't unpacked my bags for 20 years. So this is hard to, have a normal life, and the grass is always greener. People they go to their cubicle and they have the 2 kids and the mortgage, and they go, God, I wish I could be free like you. And you just travel on this bus, and you live in airports, and people wait on you, and you get to play the drums. And I said, yeah, but it is not normal. This is the strangest thing ever. I mean, either I'm in like an airport or a dressing room or a hotel or a tour bus or a recording studio. Sometimes I don't see the light of day. It's crazy. And that you have to have, it's not for the faint of heart. It's for, like, I'm a troubadour. It's like constantly moving. But you're in charge of your own destiny. So you could do anything you really want to do in life, but sometimes, always actually, it comes with a price.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you said that, because everybody's always got that the grass is always greener mentality, and it's a real shame, because there's always bad things about everything. There's always good things about whatever's happening. So you mentioned there about going on tour, and everybody has the mental image of rock stars and amazing crowds, etc. That it can be a long and tough and draining experience, like you mentioned. So how can people get that mentally strong, drive to keep going even when they have little success, and they're just playing, say, 20 people? Do you rely on your bandmates? Is it an internal thing? How can bands work through that initial hump?
Yeah, awesome question, Ian. You're a great interviewer, man. I gotta tell you, there is strength in numbers. I've been just celebrated 20 years in Nashville, and I've been playing with Jason Aldean and Kurt Allison, our guitar player, and Tully Kennedy, our bass player, for 18 years nonstop. So that's like, almost 5 presidencies, and girlfriends have come and gone, wives have come and gone, hairstyles, clothing styles have come and gone, they're coming back. We're still committed to each other. We're still playing together. And we did play for those 5 drunks, but we played for those 5 people like it was Madison frickin' Square Garden. And when you treat every gig like it's Madison Square Garden, the universe opens up to you, and the higher power says, well, these guys aren't messing around, so I'm going to reward them. And the next time we do the show, there's 50 people. And the next time you do the show, there's 500. And the next time you do the show, there's 5,000. And, so now we're playing stadiums to like 80,000 people. And I did Chicago. We played Chicago the other night, and it was 27,000 people, and it was a fire hazard, and people are there having an amazing time. And I'm there looking at my buddies, and we're like, wow, we did this, man, and you can rely on each other. There's strength in numbers. So if you're having a bad day, or you can lean on each other. I lived with these guys till a highly inappropriate age into my 30s. 3 grown men living together to save rent, because we really weren't home very much. So when we were home, we had a place to hang our hat. And then when we would go out on the town in Nashville, everyone would see us together, and they would see that commitment. We were like a 3-headed hydra. It was like, look at these guys, man. They are a team, like them, like the outsiders. But it's the music business is very much a every man for himself kind of Wild West place. And if you do find some birds of a feather, whether that be people that you can rely on to be friends or mentors, or the people in your band, it's a little bit easier. But, my first 3 years in Nashville were tough. It was very much parking cars, waiting tables. I was a substitute teacher. I did construction and just trying to connect the dots and get a steady job. And, one of my first jobs in Nashville paid, I think it was like $150 a show to play with this recording artist, and he had a major label deal. So my father, who's an accountant, said, Rich, you're going to have to do 100 shows with this guy just to make $15,000, which is kind of like poverty. Like, how are you going to pull this off? I said, Dad, I don't know how I'm going to pull it off, but I just got to do it. Failure is not an option. This is what I have to do with my life. And God bless them, my parents never said, son, get a real job. They always just said, you'll do this. So, yeah, it's tough out there. Anything worth doing is going to come at great expense.
And that was a great answer. And you touched on it. Well, actually, one of my next questions was, how do you maintain that friendship with your bandmates, especially when you're getting on each other's nerves, you're touring, you're all tired? Eric Davis, who I spoke to, talked about it as a band of brothers. You lean on your teammates. How can we keep that friendship going and nurture it and develop it, especially when, like you said, you're living in such tight quarters?
Yeah, it's tough. We do get on each other's nerves. You finish each other's sentences and stuff, but it's like a marriage. In all honesty, I saw, these last 20 years of touring, I've seen all my bandmates way more than I have seen my blood brothers, my parents, extended family members, and my spouses. Like, it's just tough, man, but you've got to bury the hatchet or whatever before the next day, because you got to go out and you got to play music together. But that's okay, because, music is it's like I said, it's that healing feeling that solves a lot of problems. But no, it's rare. It's really rare. We look at each other and we're like, there's not a lot of people that would take this far. They would have quit a long time ago. So it is kind of a cool thing to see the tale of persistence, Persistence is the key to everything. You can have all the talent in the world. Raw talent. You need raw talent. But raw talent will always be beat out by hard work and persistence. Always.
Do you find things like, having meetings together to discuss issues? Do you, how, because you've been together for 17 years, so obviously there's a strong friendship there, but is it a case of encouraging each other and having a formal way of discussing issues, or why did your band stay together compared to, say, other bands?
Yeah, I know this could be like a dissertation or a scientific research project. I don't know the answer. I just know that when times got tough, we were there and we just kept playing music, just passionately showing up. Like Woody Allen says, like 90% of life is showing up. And then when you're there, smile, have a firm handshake, have an open heart, be a servant to the job at hand. And people are going to talk about that. That's how I built my business, as being a sideman musician and a studio drummer and a speaker, is that people know that they know what they're getting. And it's not really from business cards or Facebook ads. It's word of mouth. Word of mouth is the strongest advertising you could ever have in any career. And good news travels fast, but bad news travels twice as fast. So you really can't have a bad day in anything you're doing. You just have to bleed excellence and be a approachable, sweet person that can take direction, and just have that commitment to the job at hand, and realize that you're always answering to somebody. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies have to answer to the board of directors. They have to answer to the investors, even though they're the CEO. We all have people to answer to. If I wanted to have my own band, we could go and we could sell out nightclubs in Croatia, but I would rather, be here in the U.S. and play these big venues, working for a recording artist,
No, it makes sense. I like that attitude of just keep persisting, because just keeping going and, what's it the saying, action creates emotion, or no? Emotion creates emotion or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like if you stop, that's the only time you fail is when you stop. If you fail, if you don't succeed at first, keep going, because eventually, like you said, you find the right song, you find the right style, you find the right people to go with, and that could be your life purpose. But you never know if you're going to give up too soon.
No, yeah, you cannot quit. If you quit, you are in the back of the line. It's persistence. And, the one thing I notice about people these days, these crazy kids, I sound like an old man, but they just are in such a rush. And you just can't be in a rush. You have to fall in love with the journey and enjoy the journey. And as long as you're moving forward and you're continuing to have a good time and you're paying your bills, you're winning. You're just winning left and right, So the idea is to just stay in that game, and they're in such a rush. Nashville is the new music. It's always been called Music City, but it is one of the last places to cultivate a career in the music business. And people are coming here in droves. It's the third fastest growing city in America. And all these kids are graduating with their music degrees, or they're coming here with a dream of being a music star or being a working musician, and they just want it now. And I tell them, guys, I've been here 20 years. I made $4,500 my first year in Nashville. I was broke. I ate noodles, and I had a master's degree and thousands of hours of experience. I was ready to be here, and I had a tough time. So you can't be in a rush.
So, sadly, we've grown up in an age now where, we have these people who do startups, and it's the next day, it's like it becomes a worldwide phenomenon. People go viral, and, they get famous for being stupid. And, I really hate this kind of celebrity culture we have now, that anybody can be chasing fame. What's your take on things like, the X Factor, the latest America's Got Talent, these kind of shows that, are people would rather go do that than learn a craft and build up their own personal brand?
Yeah, it's stupid, and it's fleeting, and it won't last, because the people that are achieving that are not ready for it. They're not ready for it, and they're not ready for the long game. So it's truly 15 minutes. There are the exceptions, like your Kelly Clarkson, who was on American Idol, and Kelly Clarkson can sing the phone book. She has extreme range and style and consistency, and she's a musician. She's a singer's singer. So that does happen, and those shows can be a platform for true artistry. But for the most part, it's a bunch of hacks, and they're just not ready. They haven't put the time in, and maybe they do achieve a certain level of success, and they make some quick cash, and they buy a Hollywood Hills house, and they do stupid things, and then they blow it, and then they're back right where they were before. That's not the case every time, but there's just something to be said about raw talent, molding it, paying your dues, putting the time in the trenches. There's something to be said about that.
So that's a perfect way of putting it. That's what I was going to say. Is it's like, people don't earn their dues anymore. They don't work from the bottom up. They don't learn, like, how to deal with people, how to grift, how to work their arse off to get to that point, and, learn the whole structure and how things work. Every video I've seen of you lately, you're so inspiring. You put on a great show. Your eye is drawn to you when you're watching, play a song. So how do you make yourself stand out in an industry that's probably got millions of drummers? Why, what is it about you or the way you build a performance in an industry, where it's your personal brand rather than working for a company? How can somebody give a good show regardless of what they do as a job?
Yeah, you have to make yourself indispensable somehow, because, the dream of, working for a corporation for 30 years and getting a retirement package and the gold watch and the 401k and all that stuff it's becoming rarer and rarer. It's like a unicorn. It just doesn't exist anymore. So people are having to, figure out ways to just set themselves apart, like, immediately. So people can, you could use the socials, like I'm not afraid to use the socials. I got on MySpace and started building a brand 12 years ago, or what was it, 2005. Is that what? How long ago? 12 years ago, yeah. And then as soon as Facebook opened up to the common man, not school kids, I got on that. And I just try to keep everything super squeaky clean. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about religion. I just use it as a platform to say, almost like a billboard, like, this is what I'm doing today. You can either care or not. And I don't care because I love it and I'm going to keep telling you about it. And you just find those people in life that are interested in what you're doing. But when you start getting crazy about the stuff that polarizes people and creates enemies is when you're shooting yourself in the foot. So I don't use, you can use the socials as a platform for, it's free advertising for you and your brand and what you stand for. So I've used those, and then I just, like I say, I never mail in a performance. I always play like it's the last time I'm ever going to get to play my instrument. And hopefully as a result of that attitude, people will take notice and they want to be around that kind of person or that kind of energy. And I have to, of course, give it, up to, Jason Aldean and his management and his team and everybody for giving me complete artistic freedom to be the artist that I am. I mean, they could very easily say, hey, kid, if you want this job, we want you to just stay in the back, wear black, and, don't get in the way. But they're coming at me saying, be the artist that you are. I'm coming from, Gene Krupa, the first household name in drums. He was my big hero, and Carmine Appice was a big hero, and, these naturally kind of like showy drummers, because what I've learned over the years is that people hear with their eyes. They don't hear with their ears. People can just stay home and listen to their MP3 device with their little $20 earbuds, but if they want to go experience something, you have to draw them in. So I do the best I can to draw people into my world and make them part of the blissful joy that I'm experiencing on that stage.
Yeah, I mean, and you certainly come across as somebody authentic. You can feel the passion, you can feel the intensity, and it's like you're saying, it's that you see it in you. And every time I watched a video of yours or something on social media, you could feel that emanating off the video or the text. And you're an honest performer. You're not like these people who are just copying others. You put your soul into it, and that's what I thought I really noticed was, you're an actual, you play it for the enjoyment of it. You're not playing it for the fame and that sort of thing. So that's what I will say to people is, do what you want to do, not what somebody else is telling you to do or what you think will improve. When I started the podcast, for example, I was seen as sad, but, because from my friends who didn't understand the podcast thing, but I enjoyed it, and I didn't care if it was only 2 people listening or 100,000. I enjoy it, so I'm going to do something that makes me happy. Play music. And, this has changed my life more than I could possibly imagine, and I'm sure, obviously, playing drums has done the same to you. But is, following your passion, is that always a bit of good advice for everybody?
Absolutely. And it might not mean money. Somebody said to me one time, they said, Rich, you have to do this because you want to do it. And maybe the most money you'll ever make playing the drums is $30,000 a year. Are you going to be okay with that? And, at the time I was like, eventually I would like to make more than $30,000 doing this, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting money or because it makes life easier. If you make money, it gives you the flexibility to pursue the things you want to pursue. But that can't be the motivating factor, especially when it comes to the arts. It's a little bit of a different thing. But what episode is this? How many episodes have you done of your podcast?
Oh, this will be, when it's released, probably about number 18, I think.
Okay, well, that's great.
I've done heaps of other interviews and stuff like that, but it's just listening and analysing, speaking to people, and it opens up your eyes to the world of things. I mean, I would have never, when I started, thought that there's a drummer who did motivational talk. I would never have interviewed guys who I've watched YouTube videos on for their form for squat videos, for example, or email a lady about fashion tips, and then before I know it, I'm interviewing her about how anybody can improve their style. I think that's the biggest fault nowadays, is a lot of guys don't want to keep improving. They just would rather stay in the shadows. They don't want to be themselves because of the way society dictates. We're not to stand out. We're to stand in a corner, and it's a really sad state of affairs. I mean, can you go into a little bit about some of your favourite client transformations? Some of the kids who've come to you shy, and maybe you've seen their eyes light up, when they get into music. Yeah,
there's a lot of that happens. Really, it happens quite a bit. I've had some success stories. I do these camps in Nashville. My 5th annual Drummers Weekend is coming up, and it's a 3-day event in Nashville where over a 72-hour period we have the greatest drummers in the world come in and to an intimate group of 20 to 25 kids, and they get to hang out, for 3 8-hour days with their heroes and break bread with their heroes and ask questions, and it's just super intimate environment for them, just like I said, some of the greatest drummers in the world are teaching the kids. And so, I like to provide these outlets for these kids. But, one of my recent success stories is, but I know what I was going to say, is that a lot of the kids that are coming to my little camps, they're going on and they're getting gigs in the music industry. They're getting into signed bands. They're playing with recording artists and touring. They're, working with people and playing on records, or they might get a job being a drum tech in a touring band. So it's really cool to see, they're motivated already, but then the camp puts them over the top. They're like, wow, I really want to do this. And then I picked, Kenny Aronoff's brain, who's one of the most recorded drummers in history, or I got to hang out with Thomas Lang, who's one of the world's greatest drummers. And they get even more motivated. But there's this girl that I'm working with. Her name is Sarah Cardile, and I believe it's spelled SarraCardile. And she is just exploding. She's just on fire up in the Northeast. She's in Connecticut. Matter of fact, I'm playing 2 nights in Connecticut this weekend, and she's going to come out with her family. But the key to her success is she has natural raw talent, but she works really, really hard. And her parents, just like mine, are unbelievably supportive. So, Sarah, you want to go to this camp? You want this new drumstick? You want this? But, she earns it because she works at it. So she's having a lot of success. She's playing in bands all over New England. And I think that she's going to probably come to Nashville here in 2 years and give it a go. I see her being successful at whatever she does. But it's always nice to see people that I come in contact with moving on and achieving their dreams in the music business and in life.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's definitely something I would check it out. One of the things I was going to ask about was, you have such a hectic life and, business meetings and, you do so much stuff, but how do you relax? Do you meditate? Do you things like gratitude journals? Do you ever have downtime?
I love gratitude journals. Those are all things that I should be doing. Those are all things that I should be doing. But I do like to work out. I do fitness classes Orange Theory and Barry's Boot Camp, and I go for runs and I stretch. I do some lightweight training, and I need to meditate and I need to do my gratitude. Those are really good things. When I make those things happen, life is really, really good. But at the very minimum, doing my workouts, it just makes you feel better, especially if I can get them done first thing in the morning. If I don't get them done first thing in the morning, they usually don't happen, because my life is so crazy. But the greatest joy I'm feeling in life right now, and I feel like the universe is opening up a lot in this whole area, is just this 2 years ago, I got asked to be in this horror movie called Reawakened, and I played this guy named Lieutenant Paxton, and I was on set with all these professional actors. It was my first acting job, and they said, well, hey, what's going on? What are you working on next? What's your next job? I'm like, dude, I'm a drummer. They're like, what? You got to do this, man. You're like, wow, you got to do this. So I took the cue from the universe, and I just started signing up, taking acting classes in Nashville and in Hollywood. And, I figured if you're going to swim with the sharks. So I fly to Hollywood all the time, and I've got a coach out there, and I take classes, and I'm in those classes with people that are doing that and only that. And so, I'm there. I'm with the people that are doing it. Blood is in the water, sharks are circling, and we're in it to win it. So that just gives me a lot of joy, and it's work. I mean, it's actually I've added things to my plate because it's time consuming, and you got to work on your scripts and your character development, all that kind of stuff. I love it. I really do. It's so much fun.
Well, we're coming towards the end of the interview, so it's time to go to a bit more about you. So I'm just going to throw out some prompts to you, and if you can just come back with whatever comes into your head.
Mm-hmm.
So I call this a fast break question because it's a bit more fun than the the challenging questions, I would say. So what's your favourite film, for instance?
Alien, 1978, Ridley Scott. Love it.
Is that the original?
The original.
Well, it's a good film, that. Like, I prefer the one when the Marines go in. Is it
Aliens?
Aliens. I loved that film when I was a kid. So who's the most enjoyable person that you've played with?
Oh, the best musician?
Well, who would you consider the best, and who would you say you've had the most fun playing with?
Well, I'll just say that I have the best job in the world. Probably, Jason Aldean. We've got, we're working on our 8th record, 19 or 20 number one songs, all my best friends in the band. I get to play drums the way I like to play. And then through that association, I've been able to play with people like Keith Urban and Luke Bryan and Eric Church and Bob Seger and Bryan Adams and Ludacris and Kelly Clarkson. That's all from that one relationship. So my relationship with Jason literally changed my life. So.
I mean, it's quite a phenomenal list. When you see the full amount of people, it's like you played with some greats. I mean, I loved Aerosmith, and to see you play with Joe Perry was just blew my mind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, a great band.
And what's been the favourite show that you've been a part of, or that you've watched? What bands do you watch that blow your mind?
Well, I was always a fan of the Police and U2 and Van Halen, and those were my guys coming up. My formative. I like Heartland rock. Like John Cougar. My 2 Desert Island records are Scarecrow and the Lonesome Jubilee, and they were all recorded in like the early '90s, but they still sound like they were recorded yesterday, and they really are. We're almost like the blueprint for modern country music. So they were way ahead of their time. But I like all, as far as my peers, we all get to visit with each other on these award shows. Whenever we're playing the ACMs or the CMAs or the CMT Music Awards or the People's Choice Awards or the Grammys or whatever, we all see each other. And I mean, everybody that's in Nashville and is thriving is a world-class musician. So it's great.
So what's an unusual fact about yourself that very few people would know about?
God, I am pretty sensitive and emotional. I'm the guy that'll always cry at the romantic comedy.
Any that you care to admit to?
What's that?
Any film that you'd care to admit to? What's
God,
one that gets you weeping?
Oh, I would say any Judd Apatow movie I love because you're crying because you're laughing so hard, and there's so much that speaks to the human story and the human spirit and our the plight of the common man that you're crying for multiple reasons.
Oh, good answer. Your favorite podcast?
Yours?
Do you know that's the first time somebody's ever said that?
You're doing good things, man. Just keep it up. And hey, I'll pimp mine. I have a podcast called Pick Rich's Brain, and we've had 4 episodes, and I'm usually good for 2 to 3 episodes a month. And I just interview people from music and motivation and success. It's all things music, motivation, and success. It's called Pick Rich's Brain, and it's at richredmond.com. It's on Stitcher, it's on Google Play, and it's on iTunes.
And I was watching a few episodes today. I really enjoy just the range of guests that you have, on your YouTube, and it's like the small matters, it's the big matters. You discuss with other musical stars, and it was just so interesting seeing behind the scenes of what goes into it. Can you go into a little bit about who you admire the most? Like, is it role models? Is it other drummers? Is it your parents? Who
yeah. I love my parents because they taught me by example. They're just, super sweet, hardworking people. They do what say they're going to do, and they were super amazing parents. And so I love my parents. I love all my bandmates. I've had some great teachers coming up. My teachers were Jack Berge, Jim Hargrove, Ricky Malachi, Byron Mutnick, Larry White, Henry Vega, Alan Shin, Ed Sof, Ron Fink, Robert Chitroma, Henry Oxtall. Those are all my teachers coming up through all my years, and they were all, had a big part in affecting me as a musician and as a human being. And then people I like in life, I like Tony Robbins' messaging. I like Gary Vaynerchuk's hustle. I like Tim Ferriss's, approach to lifestyle experimentation. There's a drummer that I like named Kenny Aronoff. He's a really hardworking guy that'll tell you that hard work and persistence is everything. I like Mark Ruffalo as an actor. So I like Andy Garcia, Ben Stiller, and Mark Ruffalo. I tell you, if you took those three people and put them in a blender, that's kind of like what I'm going for in my acting thing. And then I like Mario Lopez, because he's a sweet, approachable, very polished, but still friendly and approachable, host. So I'm kind of going for the Mario Lopez thing as well.
I would have seen you more as a Hugh Jackman, there's kind of the movies, the singing, the playing,
Oh yeah, he is a Renaissance man, but I don't think I'll ever have a body like that. He works out 6 hours a day for the Wolverine movies. And I could see 2, but 6, wow.
But that's okay when you've got nothing else to do, when you're getting paid millions of dollars to do it,
Yeah, I guess it's true. When you think about it, he's got to work out 6 hours a day, no cheating on his diet, and then while he's doing that, he's training for the choreography parts of the film, the fight scenes, and he's got to stay in character. He's got to know his lines. That's a tough gig, man. It's a lot of work.
And if you could put yourself as a band, play the drums in any band at all, what would it be?
Oh my God, that's a really interesting question. You know what? I'm not one to say, yeah, I would love to be the drummer in the Police or in U2 or in Van Halen, but that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? They've already got a drummer. So I'm doing the thing that I want to do. And then, the people that I have the luxury of meeting, in the next 20 years or so that I'm playing, I was supposed to meet them. I was supposed to play music with them. I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, because life is so hard that you have to subscribe to that philosophy, because, some trying things will happen in your lifetime and you just have to say, I'm supposed to learn from this in some way. I just got divorced and, it's an adjustment, emotionally, mentally, fiscally. There's a lot of adjusting going on, but I will say, ladies, I'm single.
If it was that easy, I'd be doing it all the time on here.
Right.
What do you want people to take from this interview? You're such a likable guy. You've made a major fan out of me, and I'm definitely going to be following you for future. But, what do you want somebody listening to this to take as the overall message? Is it just to get back into music? Is it to give it a shot? Or is it to keep going no matter what?
Yeah, I would say in life, let's go beyond music. If you want success and happiness in life, first of all, they're not mutually exclusive. You have to kind of define for yourself what success is for you. So I had very specific goals for myself, which was to be I wanted to be a world-class touring and recording drummer. So I wrote that down and I laminated it and I put it in my back pocket. I put it in my refrigerator. I put it in my rearview mirror. I put it in my backpack. And you have to, repeat that over and over. And then you have to take the steps necessary to make those things happen in your life. You can't just say it and expect those things to happen. I want a Porsche. It's not going to happen unless you could find the money to pay for the Porsche. But I would say, that you can have anything you want in life. So first write it down and then figure out what the steps are necessary to achieve that and then go about it and then don't stop.
That's an absolute superb answer. Couldn't put it better myself. And for somebody listening who you're going to have made a legion of new fans from this, how can they keep in touch? How can they find you on social media? How can they find a bit more about what you're acting in, what you're playing, if they want to come and see you live, etc.?
Oh, sure, man. I am a sitting duck on Google. I would love everybody everybody get their pens. Are you ready? So the hub for all things is richredmond.com. It's REDMOND.com. That'll tell you about everything that I kind of do in a broad a broad stroke. And then there's crashcourseforsuccess.com, which is basically outlines my speaking platform. So if you are a business owner or have a school or, have a community event or a business event, you can hire me to come in and speak for you, which is really fun. And then I have richacts, ACTS.com, and on there you'll see my headshots and short films and acting reels and all that kind of stuff. It's just fun. If you're really bored, you can go there. Or if you're a casting director or a filmmaker, you can check that out. I would love that. And then I have a new product out called Drumming in the Modern World. You can go to drumminginthemodernworld.com. It's 7 hours of high-quality educational material, everything I know about the drums. You go on there. There's lots of learning. There's 120 mini movies that are educational. You download them directly to your device. And I have a new app. It's called the Rich Redmond app, and it's for Android and iPhone. You can get it at the iTunes store.
That's what I found amazing, was the amount of places I could find you and see your brand and see that passion. And you're certainly taking things by storm at the moment. So the floor is open to you. I'll leave the last word up to you. Is there anything that you want promote? Is there something like an album coming out or a tour or something that you want people to check out?
Yes, we are on tour right now. We're on the They Don't Know tour. It's 75 cities. You can go to Jason Aldean, ALDEAN.com, and come see us. It's always a blast. The live show is always super fun. We're working on the 8th record. It should be out towards the end of the year, hopefully. And I am working on 2 books. I'm working on a book called Nashville Now What, which is a guide to navigating the Nashville music business. And I'm writing my Crash Course for Success book, which is just a motivational self-help book. So hopefully all these things will be out at the end of the year. But come see us on tour. Well, thanks so much. You got a great thing here, man. Next Level, man. I like it. I like the title, too.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad I decided to do this interview. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. You're such an inspiring guy, and I really hope this helps open doors for you.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.